Joe Burrow is having an unbelievable statistical season. If you look at it, he leads the NFL in passing yards and passing touchdowns. Yet, at the same time, the Cincinnati Bengals are most likely, unless Denver is to lose out, which I give a very low percent chance of happening, they're not going to make the playoffs. And you look at it and you're like, how could he have this good of a statistical season and they don't make the playoffs? And it's the organization. The Cincinnati Bengals organization is failing Joe Burrow. They're failing him. And if you look at it so far, so at least he's been paid. He's been paid his money. But if you dig more into it, Jamar Chase, they still haven't paid him. That makes no sense at all. Jamar Chase might be the best wide receiver in the NFL. He in my time of watching football, he might be out of 10 guys ever that I've watched football-wise. Jamar Chase might be a top 10 most talented wide receiver that I've seen. They've decided we're not going to pay him yet. Let him mingle. They're not going to pay him yet. They're pretty much going to let T. Higgins walk, who instantly will be the number one receiver in the free agency period. Like, can you imagine if he goes to Buffalo or Kansas City? He's going to be a one in a lot of other places. They're just going to let him walk. And it goes to Mike Brown just making these boneheaded decisions that have plagued him year after year after year. Marvin Lewis, the head coach Marvin Lewis was a head coach in Cincinnati for like 15 years, and they didn't move off him. It's wild. And they don't spend any money. They're not going to pay T. Higgins. They have lost so many defensive pieces to the point where their defense is reduced that they're so bad this year. They're letting up all these points, and it's been so bad. They're one of the worst statistical defenses in the NFL, and it's because they're choosing not to pay defensive guys, which makes no sense. You have a coach in Cincinnati, Zach Taylor, who I do think has good offensive schemes somewhat. Like, that offense runs pretty well, but do I think he's fit to be a head coach, especially in that division? Probably not. He's probably the weakest head coach in the AFC North. And you just look at all of it, and it really kind of goes down to the term scared money don't make money. If they're not willing to put in the money to do this, they're going to waste this guy's entire career. Like, Burrow's a generational quarterback at this current stage. He's done really good things. He went to a Super Bowl year 2. Is it starting to look a little bit more like Dan Marino in Miami? Dan Marino in Miami did incredible things, went to the Super Bowl year 2 as Burrow did, lost it, never made it back. A lot of it was because of bonehead moves in the organization, not making the right decisions. This could be it. And I think it's just sad to see when you have that kind of talent. Like, there are other teams that would kill for Joe Burrow as their quarterback. They'd kill for him as their quarterback. They'd be elite. Like, can you imagine if the Pittsburgh Steelers had Joe Burrow, they just drafted him? It would be Super Bowl year after year after year. Yet the Bengals continue to mess it up. What makes you think that they're just going to fix it all magically in this offseason? If he doesn't open the checkbook, I don't know what you can really do. I think and you look at it, it's the small things too. So McPherson, obviously, they brought in another kicker. They brought in Cade York, who was a known choker in Cleveland. Like, it's in division that he was cut. And the only reason that they brought him in is because they knew it would be the cheapest possible kicker on the market. If you're not willing to they're the only team in the NFL. The only team in the NFL that doesn't have an indoor practice facility, and it is Cincinnati. It is Cincinnati, where it gets cold. It gets cold in Ohio. So you could go all day. You could see the numbers. You could look at how much of a mess they've made in Cincinnati. But the true crime is if you look at the Burrows numbers, you look at what he's doing, like leading the league in passing, leading league in touchdowns, and he's not going to sniff the MVP because of how his team's record. Not going to sniff the MVP because of his team's record. It's just really, it's a bad situation in Cincinnati. I don't know what you do. As I said, I think it's scared money. I said it's scared money, don't make money. That's the way that this is right now. And I don't understand how you would not want to make a good investment within this league when it's the biggest the NFL is one of the biggest growing industries in America right now. I understand that, but to sit here and tell me, oh, it's a broke ownership, he's not broke. He owns this team. So it's mind-boggling to me. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but that kind of just goes to show how into it are you? How much do you really care about winning championships? Steve Kroenke in LA, he just spent money. He opened his paycheck. He made the Matt Stafford trade. He had them do that with the Rams. And you know what? They won a Super Bowl. Now, the Bengals were in that Super Bowl, but they didn't win it. Rams won that Super Bowl. If you look at it, the more you spend gets you more money. Look at the Denver situation right now. They took on the $80 million dead cap of Russell Wilson's contract, and they're going to make the playoffs. And they have all that dead cap. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because they executed everything properly. They weren't afraid to lose the money. It would be chaos. They would never do that in Cincinnati. So a lot of it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. But I think it really does show that if you don't really pay attention to detail, if you don't really care about success, if you're not driven by winning titles, and let's be honest with this guy, I mean, he was past this team. This wasn't his thing. He didn't originate from it. It's a pass down. If you look at it with a lot of owners, the way that a lot of these things work is usually the better owners, more prestigious owners, like people that buy teams like Josh Harris, the new owner with Washington. Look how it's an instant turnaround. Go figure, right? And if you look at it like teams that have the same ownership group, same family around it for a while, usually tend to fall off when you bring in the wrong person behind because they didn't do it to start with. It's not their thing. It's not their business. I mean, big business, it's the same thing. Like if you have somebody that owns IBM or whatever, Microsoft, and then you bring in the heir as like the son or the daughter or whatever, they're not going to be as hungry as the original person that did it was. And that's where we're at right now with the Cincinnati Bengals. It was never his team. He didn't start it up. And now you're seeing, and you've been seeing for years, the issues that they have. And unfortunately, it has to affect Joe Burrow. But yeah, and you hate to see it. And Jamar Chase is in similar strides with this too. It's ridiculous that he hasn't been paid. I can't stress that enough. How ridiculous. Any other team in the NFL would have made him the highest paid wide receiver during training camp. Any team, and it's not even like that's a big risk because of how good he was. I understand not paying T. Higgins somewhat. I would still pay T. Higgins, but I would understand it. Jamar Chase is a completely different story. It doesn't make any sense. Any other team in the NFL would have paid him, and it just weighs on people's perspective towards the team, towards how much am I going to give this. Jamar Chase, I'll give him credit. He still went out there and had a great year and really showed that he deserves that contract. But got to feel bad for Joe Burrow. Their window might be closed. The only way they get out of this is in the offseason. Let's say that I would prefer them keeping T. Higgins, but even if they lose T. Higgins, I think the offense can recover just because of pure talent. The only way is they would have to spend a lot of money on defense and draft really well on defense and also draft a proper heir to T. Higgins. That's the path. And from what you've seen from the Bengals organization for the past 20 years, I don't see how that can happen. So I pity Burrow. I feel bad for the situation, but it's a mess up top. That's why these teams fail. It matters. It matters who owns these NFL teams. It matters who the CEO is of Apple. It matters who the CEO is of Microsoft, Tesla, those companies. And it's the same thing. It matters who is the owner of the Cincinnati Bengals. And quite frankly, they're not getting the job done. Their stock is down. They don't know how to run the company. And that is where it is right now. And that's why I feel bad for Joe Burrow. And, I'd like to see them win at some point just because it'd be a good story. But they are running him into the ground right now. And it's sad to see.